Right. Well, we've never met, so why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I guess first, just I'm glad to be doing this. Thank you for doing these. It's so encouraging that
Good.
you just want to have conversations with randos on the internet, I guess.
It's a lot of fun. I wish I could do it. I wish I could add more slots each week.
Well, you already do so much. I don't know how you put out all that you do all the time and still manage to talk with people.
This is actually it's a very helpful part of the process for me, because good feedback is remarkably difficult to get. And so whether people are actually know they're giving me feedback, you are. So that's part of why I do this too. Helps me kind of have a sense of, okay, what I'm sending stuff out there. What's happening to it? And so that's what I learned from you.
Yeah, well, I'd say for me at least, it's tremendously encouraging. I wanted to sign up for a slot just on a whim. I checked it.
Your sound suddenly degraded significantly.
Is that better?
Not much. Stick close to your computer. Computer mics can be really funny like this. I have some friends in church, actually some leaders in church. If they're right in front of their computer in Zoom, I can hear them. If they're right over here, they're gone. So, which mic is if you look at?
Yeah, well, I wanted to get a slot just, for a while, but I would just check kind of occasionally. And then about a month or so ago, I just checked it for the first time in a month or so, and there was a slot, and I sat on it for a while. I didn't know if I really wanted to talk with you, if it was worth my time or not, or if it would be, worthwhile to you, or what I'd even talk about. And then it disappeared. So I've been watching it like a hawk ever since.
They're gone. When I open them up, they're usually gone within an hour or two. So they go pretty fast. If you see one and you want one, you better grab it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess you asked for my story. I grew up I'm in Columbus, Ohio right now. Not Columbus proper, but a little outside of the city, kind of in a smaller community. But I grew up in rural southwestern Ohio, around Cincinnati area. My grew up in like a small Baptist church, real tiny, and both my parents their parents were divorced. So I think that made for my mom and dad just really caring about family, and we just had a really close knit, tight family growing up, and just me and my brother. Spent a lot of time together. It was just really, really good. I guess the downside of that is I kind of like clung too close to family, and I was afraid to really adventure out beyond that. I was really quite shy and anxious. I still am a little bit. I just afraid to engage and reach out often. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's always nerve-wracking and unsettling to me. So I guess I just I think my childhood was very propositional heavy. Like when I came across Vervaeke's 4 Ps, that propositional knowing, I just thought, boy, I've been living my whole life in that headspace, and it explained a lot of where I was and who I'd become. And I think tying into that, I got into high school, and the Creation Museum had opened up in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember Ken Ham swinging by the communities and the towns in the area, like scoping it out. And he gave me a dinosaur card, and he would swing by our church every once in a while. So, yeah, when that came to town, I was in high school, and it was all the rage in the Christian community. Have you seen the Creation Museum? go down there. And man, I think I wanted to talk about fundamentalism and the, what do you want to talk about, text box. But for all its strengths, it left me, I don't know, just too propositionally focused. Like when that came to town, I just glommed onto the Creation Museum and Answers in Genesis. And I think, that verse, 1 Peter 3:15, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that lies within you. As a kid, I interpreted all of that Creation Museum stuff and a lot of what I was going through in church and learning as just giving explanations and apologizing, as in apologetics.
Mm-hmm.
I never just read that verse simply as just give an answer for the hope that lies within you. I don't really think I had that hope in me, I was just fearful and afraid and shy, and it never manifested itself until recently. It's been a wild ride the last few years.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, I went through, I got out of high school, went to college, Cedarville University.
Yeah.
If you know where that's at.
Yep.
I started off as a pre-law major, which is something I never would have managed to do. I could not have done that. But, I thought, hey, I like all this Answers in Genesis stuff and getting answers. I want to be a lawyer and find the right answers. And no. So I went to another, fact-based career, which was accounting. So I work in finance. I'm a corporate accountant right now in big business. So it's been a good career. It's treated me well. But yeah, I mean, I think once I got to college, that's when I called it a deconstruction for a long time. But then I saw one of you had somebody on, and he referred to it as a renovation.
Yeah.
And I started calling it a renovation. So I met my wife. We got married. That was in 2013. And then we moved to Texas, traveled all around, just had lots of fun. But the church and faith, my spirituality was just kind of forgotten about. I was just living life.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess around 2016 or so, I had kind of reached the end of my propositional stick. Like I got sucked into the Calvinism Arminianism debate, courtesy of John Piper, who I love him to death, but I felt like I had to be on his side in everything. And my whole world was just this, Answers in Genesis, propositional, right, wrong, kind of thinking. And boy, you get into that debate with Calvinism, and that's all you can do, you're going to run out of gas real quick because there's no answer.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And I got real cynical. It slowly happened. I just noticed cynicism cropping up. I decided, when you didn't know where to turn, I kind of turned to tradition, and I said, let me go back to a church. So we church hopped for a while and found a place. I got baptized, tried to force myself to participate there. And I think A+ for effort, but I was tyrannizing myself, and I did it tyrannically. My heart wasn't in it. So that kind of, piddled out and fell apart. And then someone really close to me, suicide happened. That was late 2017. And all my propositional acrobatics with theology and the Bible and God, and I really just said phooey on it. It's done. And I glommed onto politics in early 2018. If theology and my tradition and growing up in church and all that I've learned isn't going to work. I might as well fight for what I think's right, because if I can't change the world, maybe a system can, and I'll get on this team and we'll fight the others. And then Jordan Peterson came up. I saw the Kathy Newman interview, and it's so funny. I saw him and thought, here's a guy that can set the world straight the way I think it should be. And yeah, so I bought his book, read that, watched his Bible lectures, which for me was crazy. I was dabbling in heresy listening to a guy talk about evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that was a big jump for me. Like I was just, okay, this is it. No turning back, I guess. If I'm tolerating this guy, there's no tolerance for him otherwise. It's what I've come to believe. Yeah, and then there's this funny interview. It's not funny, but I don't see many people talk about it, but it was Pajot, Peterson, a guy named John Patrick, I think. He was at this, I just looked his name up because I had no clue who he was. But he was on a panel in early 2018. And John Patrick, I think, is some Catholic, he's related to the Catholic Church somehow.
Yeah, I think so.
He gave this beautiful description of the Beatitudes and how if you go through them step by step in the morning and then process yourself through that every day. I mean, there's the procedural knowing. It's the next step.
Yeah.
It changes your life. And Peterson responded to it, and I thought, boy, this guy's more than just a political flame. Like there's something deep here.
Yeah.
And I just, over the next few months, I saw my life start to change around. Like my marriage was on the mend. I had completely broken it, but in the dumbest way possible, by like just being the leader of the house and, you know, trying to set things right and in order. I was tyrannizing her just the way I tyrannize myself. And yeah, so, I mean, it was great. Like I found more confidence in myself at work, personally, with neighbors, strangers. I started lifting some weights, which the physical activity just, it's amazing how mind and body are so connected.
Yeah.
Helps tremendously.
Yeah.
You got to take care of that too.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that took me along, and then late 2019 came around and we started seriously trying for a kid. I have a 6-month-old boy now.
Ah, how wonderful.
Yeah. That's been an absolute delight and a perspective shift. So there's the next, like the 4P. I found Vervaeke's 4Ps just to be so tremendous in telling story and understanding myself in situations. But yeah, and I found him thanks to you. I think I saw your initial Peterson interview. So you were in the algorithm mix somehow, but I didn't follow you permanently. And then in late 2019, something came up and you got recommended to me, so I watched it. I think it was the Peterson Harris stuff, which was way over my head. I didn't get it. I was so black and white. I couldn't understand Peterson. I walked away from that thinking, boy, Sam Harris crushed it. Like Peterson does. And then I had to listen to you to understand. And yeah, so that was just mind opening. And then Vervaeke was on your mind a lot then, I think.
Yep.
I took in the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis at, I think, the best time anyone could have done it. I consumed it and ended the day the pandemic struck.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm in an empty office by myself. I didn't have a fast internet at my house, so I just went to the office every day. I was an essential worker. That was nice. But it was weird being in an empty office. And around that same time, like within a few days, we found out we were pregnant. So that was a crazy change of pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also had just started attending 1 or 2 weeks into this church, a Bible church here in my town. Funny thing is, I had visited 5 years ago and sat in there and said, they're too fundamentalist, and they're not gonna get along with smart me, and all, I avoided it. And then I went back and listened to the same preacher, saw the same people, and talk about just having new eyes. I saw it differently, new perspective. So when the pandemic hit, it was weird, just odd. And then Vervaeke started his Meditating with Vervaeke series.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, what the hey? I've talked with an evolution, Jordan Peterson dabbled in that evolution thought. I just went through Vervaeke's thing. It was so informative. I'll just sit with his meditation series. I did that, and it made his lectures shine brighter.
Okay.
Just going through that experience, learning the practices, the embodied practices of what he does.
Yeah.
You can see the meaning in his words a lot more clearly, I think. So yeah, I mean that, and then my son came at Thanksgiving. I just spent the whole pregnancy cleaning up my room, getting, just finishing all that. It was 2020 was a wonderful year for
Wow.
even in the midst of all the craziness around us.
Wow.
So yeah, and you've been tremendously helpful in this whole process, and I just have to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. What's been helpful for you? Like I said, a lot of this for me is feedback. So what's been helpful?
Man, seeing your openness and engagement with all types of people, and then saying it's not by your power, it's by the power of cross and Jesus and what he's done. I mean, I think you said something the other day that I wrote down. It was you said the resurrection is moving my lips, changing my heart, and forming my soul.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that's participatory.
It is. It is.
Yeah. And you do that. I got an inkling of it when I stumbled across Joe Rogan around the time, probably a little before Peterson came onto my radar. And I just thought, man, this guy knows how to be a friend, And that was something I did not know how to do. My family life was so strong growing up, deep family life. So, the church was good, although it was a dying church. I think it's because we were so, I mean, you can't blame people for doing that, because when the world's crazy, you got to protect what's sacred. And,
yeah.
Peterson, when he talks about, resurrecting, or, the spirit of your father from the abyss, that just strikes me deeply every time. I go back to that over and over again. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it's just your friendship and how you truly fellowship and partake and share in what you're learning and what others are going. And it's just, I'd never seen that, so
Thank you. Thank you. It's helpful for me to know, because I don't know. I put out this crazy quantity of video, which for me is just sharing what's on my mind, and that people watch and find it helpful is deeply gratifying. But I don't honestly quite know what's going on, but it's fun. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, I think that's, I'm a big baseball fan, and Ken Griffey Jr., when he came to Cincinnati. I was young, and I still love the guy. I think he's a great guy from what I know about him. But he has a quote where he says, when you're having fun, it turns all the pressure into pleasure.
That's a good quote.
Yeah, I love it. And I keep using the word tyrannize, but I don't know what else to say. I had tyrannized myself out of having fun and playing. And you and Vervaeke and Peterson, and it's just playing. I mean, you have so many other people on. They come into the estuary, and I follow them down their channels and watch them.
Yeah, they're all up the little tributaries.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true. That's been there's a new one too now. Sherry Harkin did a did a video with me not too long ago, and she wanted to start a artists guild, and so she's now started a channel, and she's having some people on. So that to me is also deeply gratifying, just to watch these tools, because what is this YouTube tool? We don't really know, but just to watch these things be helpful to people and bring a little bit more joy into the world. Joy is really the I got this quote out of a church growth book in the late 90s. In the 21st century, duty motivates nothing, joy motivates everything. And I really liked that. It was from William Easom, who's writing these church growth books. But that's, when you talk about tyranny, the opposite of tyranny is joy. And, gosh, you shouldn't have tyranny between you and your wife. You want joy. And now that your child is born, that's great joy. And a 6-month-old, that's just this Saturday, my wife and I went to a birthday party of some friends of hers, and now my wife's friend's niece is now dating one of my sons, and it was a birthday party for a 2-year-old. And so there was just we were kind of the oddballs at the party because we're older and our kids are grown, but there was just a whole clutch of young parents with 2-year-old children, and just watching those little 2-year-olds running around, I thought, this is joy. And of course, 2-year-olds, it's pretty chaotic joy, but it is joy. And sometimes sorrow. It goes from joy to sorrow, lickety split. But
yeah.
so
Yeah.
nothing like a 6-month-old, and all the new learnings that come, and I mean, especially at this age. I mean, between 6 months and 4 years, it's a rocket ride in terms of progress. I mean, now you're seeing it already. This little 6-month-old can do so much more than the newborn. And wait another 6 months, you're going to be, first rolling and scooching and crawling and pulling himself up and grabbing. And you got to childproof the house, and
Yeah,
it's terrific.
Yeah, your salience landscape change when there's a little one crawling around.
You bet it does. Bet it does. The whole world, you see the whole world differently through that prism. And it's I you look at the numbers of people deciding that they don't want to have children because why? Because you can watch movies and go out to bars and stuff. That versus raising a child, it's not even in the same league. They have no idea what they're missing out on.
Yeah.
It's
weird. Peterson's push for responsibility and speaking that into the culture. It's fun.
It is.
It is. It's finding meaning is fun, and it's I don't it's so hard to talk about I don't like talking about Christianity as a large box. I just like to think of me and, what happened to me,
Mhm.
what I've been through, because I see everything through my lens of my experience and what I'm learning.
Right.
And yeah, it's just, for me, this responsibility growing up was not fun as much, and it it's weird though. We worked and had fun. I did a lot of hands-on work with my dad, and it's so weird having an office job right now, because I grew up thinking work was something where you look back and we painted houses, and the house was painted and it looks great, and you were tired, physically tired,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being mentally tired it's hard to transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in accounting, because the work just keeps coming. I I mean, you
Yeah.
don't, I mean, maybe when you finish the taxes or a quarterly report or something like that, it's like, whoosh, accomplishment. There it is. But it's not like looking at a house.
Mhm.
I painted houses for a summer, and yeah, at the end of the day, you're tired and you've been in the sun, and but when that house is painted, you know, well, it's going to need painting again at some point, but it's done for a few years, and that's a good thing. No, you're very right. You're very right. And in my job too, I mean, Sunday comes every 7 days. There are weddings, there are funerals, and those are sort of boundary markers, but often it's, a lot of, in the pastoral vocation, you have the same conversations over and over and over with people, because they're stuck in something, and you don't have you don't have a tremendous amount of ability to help them get unstuck and moving forward again. And so there's a lot of conversations with stuck people, but it's patient, long work. People's stuckness is a lot more complex than a house that needs painting.
This is true, very true. Yeah. um I Helping people with their stuckness, and myself with my own stuckness, I think that's something I've learned watching you and um others. I think I mentioned etymology in the text box of what do you want to talk about. That was it's it's amazing how, if you pay attention to the words people use, you there's always something there that needs a little more nuance, or there's reasoning why they picked that word and not another. And we usually mean a lot more with the words we're choosing than we even know. And just being patient with people as they work through their words, and listening and inquiring is such a useful skill that I'm trying to work on, because I spent years getting triggered by evolution or
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah,
all these, yeah, just red flags. Don't go there. That's the
yeah,
other side.
yeah.
Um, and yeah.
And that's no, that's a good thing to think about, because and then some people are like, well, banish red flags. No, don't do that. You need red flags, and um figure figure out what the red flag is doing and why it's there. It's sort of like Chesterton's fence. you know don't figure out what it's doing, why it's there, and um no, and in time continue to grow. And you're so right about words. To listen to someone is a is not an easy thing, and then to understand them, and then to be helpful to them. And so often, again, in their stuckness, okay, what do they need? And people usually, especially certain church traditions, major in confrontation. And there is a time for confrontation, but I find confrontation is one of the most difficult things to attempt, and people wade into it not really in love, but much more in self-expression, that their confrontation is self-expression and not really about helping the other. And all that that does is create hardened tribes. And so why did they choose this word? And can you, and in almost every case, I don't heal people. They much more heal themselves, but I sort of, and it's the same way with doctors. I mean, doctors don't really heal you. They maybe a little adjustment here and there, but they try to set the condition for your body to heal itself. And that's pastoral work. That really is pastoral work.
Yeah. I mean, it's pastoral, guiding, shepherding. It's keeping the fences up in the right places. Yeah.
Sometimes creating a new gate, sometimes locking another gate.
Yeah. It's I love that video of the sheep in the ditch.
Yeah. It's so true. I saw it and it was like, oh, that's my job. You pull the sheep out of the ditch and they run back in. And they call you pastor. Yeah, I know. You're back in a ditch. I'll get you out again.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you about the ditch, but you're not going to hear. You're going to go back. And at some point, you're going to say, I've been in this ditch 4 times this year. Okay. What does that say?
Yeah. Paul might be getting tired of pulling me out, and he showed me a couple of ways I can help myself a little bit.
And maybe I'll stay to this side of the ditch for a while.
Yeah.
Instead of jumping back in.
Yeah. I mean, that's engaging with others with love and patience and gentleness, and it's the fruits of the Spirit that don't make sense in any other world. Unless you live in.
And yet, the Apostle Paul also says, yet there's no law against this, which is so interesting, because there's laws against all sorts of things, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. There's usually no law against self-control. There's no law against patience. There's laws against all kinds of things, but those things, even tyrannical countries, well, things are getting tyrannical when there's a law against patience. When you don't think, just obey. Oh, okay. I see some tyranny coming down the road here.
It's and that you need that governance, but I just listened to Peterson talk again about the whole you need to be a monster conversation, but then you need to be a good monster. You need to know your strength and your capacity to tyrannize, but then wield it for good.
Well, what you got on your list? You got a list of stuff that you wanted to talk about? I know you put some things in the notes.
Yeah, I'm consulting it right now just to see. Here's one. So I really enjoy the estuary topic. I'm actually been participating in the group of John Van Donk's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So
and what? Oh boy. Now, John is going to be, because John has, he's been on my videos a number of times, but he's been a real partner in me with this. And for John, estuary is sort of an important thing because he's sort of a misfit in some ways, even though he's not as much of a misfit as he likes to pretend he is. But so what have you gotten out of that group?
Well, I'll give him a shout out. He's been tremendous. His sacrifice and doing that every couple weeks is
Yeah,
such a pleasure.
yeah.
So
And he's got a lot of wisdom. He really does.
he does. He's very insightful. He kind of, if the conversation stalls out, he knows where to poke and prod, and
Yep.
it's good. Yeah.
Yep.
I think you say he's always got a scheme. I'm gonna razz him about that next time.
He does. He always has a scheme. He has many schemes for my life.
Yeah.
And he's been more successful than many, but not as successful as he would like to be. Well, when my channel took off, he was very quickly, he's like, oh, you got to do a meetup. And he wasn't the only one that said that to me. There were a number of other people that said that to me, but he's been very encouraging. And he sometimes, I like my ruts. So in that way, I'm like the sheep. I like my ruts often, and he kind of gives me a kick every now and then to get out of a rut, because he says, well, you've done this and you've done this, but you really should be doing some more of this. And I was like, yeah, gosh, he's right. I don't want to tell him he's right, because he enjoys it too much when I tell him he's right, but
Yeah.
he really is. And so I should. And so many of his schemes that, he and Job cooked up the West Coast tour, which got preempted by COVID, and he's got more schemes up his sleeve. And so then this estuary support group thing, he cooked that up, and I said, well, let's make a video and see how many people show. But I said, I can't lead these groups. You're going to have to. And he said, oh, okay, I'll do it. So, and he has.
Yeah. And it's been very fruitful for me. I mean, I'd love to meet with people that interact with your channel in my area. That'd be fantastic. But honestly, he's very much inspired me to get out of just to confront, my fear of interacting with others and being wrong, and just going out there and making friends. And I've been participating in my church, and it's just been fantastic. And what I've learned, I think, is that this estuary thing, yeah, it's a place. It can be a physical gathering of people. But man, I'm just learning that I think it's a way to describe a way of being and living. And
being what?
I think it's a way to describe, a way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's right. And John, John has embodied that. And, so if I should put the, if we share this, I should put the link to our first story, where John really tells his story. And he's lived a quite a remarkable life. His home the home he grew up in, his story with his father and his mother, and then sort of accidentally finding himself with a permanent visa to Canada, which was just a total clerical error on the part of someone. And then, finding himself in Christian Reformed churches, because that's where all the successful dairymen went. And, he wanted to be successful financially. And so he goes there, and then he winds up becoming a minister in the Christian Reformed Church, which is no quick or easy thing to do. And usually that's a the CRC, basically, if you become a CRC minister, the basically it's a vow for your career. You can get out, but the expectation is you will be in this until you retire. And then even after you retire, you're still serving. And so it's a sort of a vow for life. And then, he finds himself, in a situation where he gets out of ministry, and then he's divorced, and he's raising his 3 daughters. And, this church in Southern California just comes around him and holds him and loves him. And, then, every now, there's some theological misfitting that he has there, but he's deeply a part of that church. And so then he gets into this competitive storytelling business, and he finds his way onto CRC Voices, which is where he and I meet. And then the Jordan Peterson, he grabs onto Jordan Peterson, partly because he was a huge, Richard Rohr played such a big part in his life. But John's got all of that in him. And, he comes out in this crazy Dutch immigrant sort of way where you can still find some of them in the Christian Reformed Church in North America. Many of them are gone, but he's really quite a remarkable man. And so he doesn't appreciate that about himself enough, but I know it's true.
Yeah. He's his life's taken him on a crazy story so far, but that story's it's rich, and there's a lot to share,
Yeah. And he's very generous in sharing it.
Yeah, that's hard to do too, a lot of times, just to share your story, or at least how you see it, because others might not see it as you do, and you're putting it out there to be, I want to say, refined and trained, and to make, it's honestly, you're putting it out there to train your own storytelling process of your own now in here experience.
Yep.
Was I thinking about that properly in the past or not? I asked you a question, I think, on the Q&A. I wasn't able to be there live last week.
Oh, okay. Which question was it?
It was about this, I think, story and Vervaeke's wariness around narrative.
Oh, yeah.
I've been really trying to understand his approach to narrative and story. I think I get it somewhat, but I don't want to claim to know it fully. But I can't get out of the thought that it's almost necessary to live. We tell ourselves stories all day long, and this occurred to me this morning, actually, thinking about this whole topic. Vervaeke is hesitant, and not hesitant. He's I think he warns people he cares about the dangers of story, the way that a lot of Christians warn about the dangers of sin. Vervaeke's just going, hey, be very careful, because you can really deceive yourself, and you can become arrogant, and don't become resentful if your story is not what you thought it was going to be. And that totally fits in with the whole, pursuing Socrates and setting him up as his sage, because that's what Socrates did. He was a midwife and wanted to draw out of people wisdom, I suppose.
I just find, asking people I understand being wary of stories, because in a pastoral vocation, a lot of what I do is help people curate and manage their stories, because that's sort of the way they manage their lives already. Therapists do a similar thing to try and help people change their story into a better story. But even the navigation of better or worse is so story is just this ubiquitous tool. It's almost as if telling our civilization, warning them about the wheel. Tires are dangerous. You go fast with them, and they can run over you, and you can, when you put something on four wheels, and you can hurt a lot of people, and all of that is true. But I don't think the wheel is going anywhere. It's just too darn practical.
Yeah.
And, if you, and I think part of, he reminds me, he says, well, this autobiography that we do isn't, we wait till we get to this developmental period when we start doing it. But I, I have difficulty I have difficulty imagining anyone on the planet who is living functionally without it. Now, okay, there are limits to it, and those limits should be paid attention to, but it's sort of like getting rid of the wheel. I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard because I, you know, you, I, it seems to me that I'm living my life and looking to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, and telling myself, reading that story, running that story over and over in my head. And eventually, it's like, becoming a dad. The stories you tell yourself fall away, and it's just reality. And he talks about parasitic processing, how we can narrow ourselves down to where the world can't be anything else than what it is, and we can't be anything other than what we are to the world that we're in. And I think that's the danger of stories. We can tell ourselves the wrong stories. And I certainly did for a long time. And yeah, by the grace of God, it's I don't know where that insight comes from that gets you out of a story that eventually will prove horrifying because it was wrong.
But I can't imagine you communicating to me any of this without story.
Yeah.
Because that's instantly how you conceptual. Even changing the story is in a story framework. We just can't escape this thing. And
yeah, it's like at the end of The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis. It's so great, and then he goes, and then it's a dream.
I know I like so much about that book, and I get to the end and I want to throw the book across the room and say, what you
Yeah.
that is the weenie way out of this book. And that is, sorry, Saint Clive, Saint Jack, do it better. Dream.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought the same when I got to the end of that.
Yeah. I'm so glad, I haven't, one of these days, and John and I talk about this because at some point I want to visit his groups and I want to listen to your stories and I want to see what's going on in this. But I also don't want to, I don't want to mess it up, because my sense is that it's grown nicely and organically, and but it does, I mean, decadence is something to be, um it's something to be cognizant of, because just like you described, churches, they can become these little holy huddles, and 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 then they become decadent and small and insular. And I mean, these groups are created in order to, at some point, have more groups. And the I mean, this is, if they don't, I mean, it's sort of, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been thinking about making a video about this, but I haven't done it yet. There is sort of a progression, ideally. Now, it can't happen in this life or in this world, but ideally every satisfying conversation progresses into a relationship. and the relationship progresses into a friendship. And now there are natural, ends to these things that are right and good, but then there are also hierarchies, because let's say a conversation between a man and a woman can develop into a friendship, and then a relationship, and then a marriage, and then the fruit of that marriage is, a child, and then children, and there's sort of a natural progression that goes with this. Um and so the with John's Estuary Support Network, which he and I have joked a lot about the title of that, but um it's made so that the group that you have, kind of, you're anticipating the fruit of the group that you have will be another group, which will be more people around the table. And part of what's so fun about having a child is you begin to see the world through the eyes of that child. Peterson notes that a toddler is delightful because via the toddler we see the world through them. And so even though, none of the children were mine at this 2-year-old's birthday party, and, I have no grandchildren yet. I very much hope to someday have some. But, just watching the world through the eyes of those 2-year-olds was deeply rich.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly is. And it's weird. The accountant in me, I think maybe I'm a little cynical towards the whole accounting industry. I saw I think I saw Pageau's video on the symbolism of 666, and it's all about having complete, orderly, accounted numbers. And I think there's an aspect to this Estuary Host Support Network thing and the whole estuary concept that you put out and try to live out in what you're doing. It's going to have things that are unaccounted for. I mean, I almost never talk to you, but you've had an impact across the country, and it, yeah, it's you just live and do things, and God weaves it.
Yeah.
And things come together.
Yeah. That's what the New Testament says. The Apostle Paul, who wrote so much of the New Testament, he says, hey, someone sows, someone waters, we play these little parts in each other's lives. And often, and you'll discover this as a young father. I mean, that little it's a boy, right?
Yeah.
That little boy is he is a massive sponge, and you are imprinting on him in terrifying ways right now, and none of you know it, and it'll all be revealed decades later. But it is I mean, we are along for the ride of an amazing thing, which is this world that we are just cognizant of in only glimpses now and then. And again, to me, part of why I'm a Christian is that via this story, I have faith that this amazing thing that we're a part of is finally a good story. And it's a story of joy and glory, and even the suffering bits, which are crushing at times, will somehow feed into the joy and glory that is yet to be revealed. And I find that just to be such an enormously compelling story that I don't want to give it up. And so maybe, John says, give up your stories. I say, no, I ain't giving it up, John. Sorry, it's not happening.
I know. It's just, it's too fundamental to how we operate. I mean, I was just thinking about, you have we're never forsaken. And the thing Jesus says on the cross is, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
That's something we never have to say. And having a little boy, you know, it makes you want to, you know, not be cynical and arrogant and think you can move on from your father, but to justify that and be responsible and, you know, resurrect that tradition. And then your boy, you just look to him and say, man, I'm going to wrong you. I know, and I have faith that I'm going to instill faith in you, that I believe you'll get through even all my bumblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm never going to leave you nor forsake you.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Yep.
And that's a story of how. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good place to land the plane. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's 3. Hour goes by quick.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So, well,
Well, Paul,
anyway,
thank you.
Quentin, this has been a joy. I will send you this video, and you can share it with your wife and decide, you know, if this is something that's okay to share with the world. But it's been a delight talking to you. Thank you so much for finding a slot.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll let you know, and appreciate your time.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.